evening, Indiana. Welcome to this special presentation of the Progressive Indiana Network. My name's Scott Aaron Rogers. I'm the editor-in-chief over here and host of the Who's Left podcast. I am joined by Dr. Tim Peck tonight for our final virtual town hall of this primary season. We are only 2 days away from election night, so you late deciders, let's hear from Dr. Peck before we go to the polls on Tuesday. He is looking to represent the Democratic Party here in my 9th district, that is southern and sort of southeastern Indiana, Bloomington, the Louisville metro area side of Indiana, Lawrenceburg, down that way. You can get your questions in online. We are live on YouTube, on Facebook Live, and of course at progressiveindiana.net. You can submit your questions in the chat, and I can get those right to Dr. Tim. I do not want to be the one asking questions tonight. I want to be your conduit. So please get your questions in. We also have a web form. There's a QR code floating around. You can use that too. I've got that open. All right, enough from me. Dr. Peck, please introduce yourself to the good folks who don't know you yet.
Thank you, Scott, for doing this. I appreciate you not only doing this, but all of the work that you do to bring educated voters to the booth. I think that's what the greatest value of what you're doing here is, making sure that people know what they're voting for and making sure they vote often, which is a problem we have here in Indiana in terms of our voter turnout. So my name is Dr. Tim Peck. I'm an emergency physician in Southern Indiana. As Scott said, Indiana 9 is the 18 southeast counties of Indiana. And I live in Clark County, which is kind of the middle lower part, right across the river from Louisville. I live in a rural area on a farm. And I live in a healthcare desert, which is something we will talk about tonight, because Indiana 9 is really a microcosm of the country, in that we have urban areas and that we have metropolitan suburban areas and we have rural areas. And those rural areas especially are struggling in terms of hospital closure and services closures. You can only give birth to you can only deliver babies in 6 of our 18 counties, for example. Wow. But what I'm running for is the fact that it costs too much to go to work in this country. Those aren't my words. That's the words of someone at the doors. They said, it costs too much for me to go to work. And so, what do you mean by that? And they said, yeah, the gas prices are high, sure. But I have to put that on a credit card that has 25% interest rate. And I have to pay my housing and my mortgage, of which I am already behind on. And to go to work, I have to pay childcare to even be able to go to work. And then I need to pay the education bills that I have, that I needed to even get the job that I have. And so on and so on. And of course, the biggest nut there is the amount of money that's coming out of that person's paycheck for their healthcare. So my solutions and where I'd like to go here, first of all, I've sworn off all corporate PAC money and sworn off all money coming into from corporations into my campaign, which I think has really put a new way of me seeing the world, where I have to run a grassroots campaign. I have to be out there knocking on people's doors, because when I need money, I can't pick up the phone and call Chase Bank or Duke Energy. I need to talk to the voters. So that's what's really driving me in terms of building a movement. We have built one here. Was the Democratic candidate a year ago or 2 years ago when Trump swept this country, and now stayed in the fight to take what we learned there, take the foundation and the platform that we built, and make it into something that has become a movement of 1,000 volunteers at this point, knocked on over 10,000 doors, probably more. This week I haven't counted the ones, but this week, but it's a lot of activity. Tons of postcards, tons of phone calls, and really making a dent in what we're doing here to get the kind of left of center progressive word out. And myself, as we talk about this in the town hall, is to be someone who can translate what it is to be a Democrat to those who haven't been voting Democrat, and try to bring them back into the fold. So and maybe they were, and they should be again. So that is me, and I'm excited to answer questions tonight. And again, thank you, Scott, for doing this.
Thanks, Doc. And I am excited as well to bring the people's questions to you. Again, I know there are folks watching. Don't be shy. Please submit your questions online, YouTube, Facebook Live, and progressiveindiana.net. I'd be happy to relay those to Dr. Tim for you, and we can go from there. I've also got some questions ready to help sort of keep the conversation moving while we're waiting on folks to get their questions in. But I want to start with something you said and go right to our web form. We had a couple questions come in ahead of time, and you sort of hinted at this, and Sarah asked if you will accept corporate PAC money in this election. Now, you said no. Okay, great. So I've got a follow-up, though. How do you ensure you're not kind of indirectly taking corporate PAC money? You know, a lot of the already elected office holders have these like leadership PACs, and they will donate to other kind of aligned candidates through those. Well, maybe they're taking corporate money. So I guess, is there a way that you vet that?
Yeah, that's a great question, and a very nuanced question. Of course, Scott, you would ask that and really understand the process. So on the corporate PAC side, right, if I could start there and then move into the more nuanced part of it that you asked, so I can outline it for people. So first of all, I signed on with 70 other candidates across the United States onto something called Take Back Accountability in Congress. And what I've signed on to was one, term limits, and that I will uphold term limits. The signature I had to put on was for 6 term limits, but I think it should be 4 term limits for my spot, in order to not have individual stock trading, to not take any corporate PAC money, to make sure that we will vote on a Supreme Court ethics resolution that will make it so that they have to report the gifts that they have, and the transparency there, and then a moratorium, a 5-year moratorium on working for corporate lobbyists afterwards as well, after you leave office. And so really it's the package of all those things, right? We could talk about not taking corporate PAC. It's the integrity of the package of all those things that makes it so that you must have a grassroots movement to win, and to get into Congress and to represent people. And if I can define what grassroots movement actually means, rather than just use that trite word at this point, what that means is I'm not going to raise as much individual or dollars as Erin Houchin in the fall in this way. But I certainly will have team and myself knock more doors than she has. I have already knocked more doors than she ever has in her entire career, and the teams that she has, because she does depend on Duke Energy. She does depend on ExxonMobil. She does depend on Chase and Bank of America and real estate, Associated Citizens of America, et cetera, to give her the money that she needs. And what that means is that if you and I have a conversation, Scott, and Chase Bank calls my office and says, "Hey, I need 10 minutes of your time," and I've taken $40,000 from them, I'm going to say, "Scott, I know you're my constituent, but I'm sorry, you're going to have to reschedule this. I got a call to take." Versus saying, "I don't owe that person anything. I owe you something." And that's what that package of saying no means. Now, money comes from various places, but and as you're saying, there's money that's called dark money. And what is dark money? Dark money is money that comes from billionaires, corporate interests, other things that go into a not-for-profit PAC, and you don't know who took that money from, where the money came from, and then that not-for-profit PAC gives money to you. I consider that a corporate PAC as well, those not-for-profit PACs. So I will not take that money as well. Then there is money from, like you're saying, Democratic committee, from Democratic officers and people who hold office currently, that got their money from corporations, and they want to give it to you. Andre Carson said that he wanted to write my first check, and I didn't take that money, for example. And so I am also saying I'm not going to take money from any candidates that take money from PACs. So that is also part of it. I think running in Indiana 9 gives us a ton of freedom to do that. Why? Because the Democratic Party has abandoned Indiana and Indiana 9, the national party. I don't know where they are. I haven't seen them anywhere. They're not having, even Bernie Sanders and AOC isn't coming through with their national tour anywhere that I've seen. So, right. And I'm saying even that side of the party, the whole party, it's just Indiana has been left on the vine. And that's the case for rural America and red rural America everywhere right now, is that Chuck Schumer, of course, has given up on and has said many times, like, we should be hitting the suburbs. We don't need those rural. We voted a DNC chair that doesn't want a 50-state strategy versus one that does. And so if they're not coming, why do I have to play to their whims? We should run our campaign in a way that represents what people here actually want.
Very good. Thank you. A lot there. And I appreciate you sort of explaining through all of that. I want to go to the chat and, you talked about, obviously, you mentioned the progressive Democrats, they're not coming through here, and the DNC, they're not really helping us out. You also mentioned like kind of talking to the Republicans in your area and reaching out to them and maybe pulling them into the fold. And as such, Christine on YouTube asks, what type of Democrat do you consider yourself?
I consider myself left of. So let me say, I'll say what I consider myself, and then I need to explain that. Because I think people have different ideas of words. So I consider myself a left of center Democrat. And what that means to me is that I have progressive ideals in which I have in the past worked and can continue to work with people who don't share all of my ideals to still make progress. And so some people may call that a moderate. For me, and I used to brand that as moderate, and I thought that might be moderate. For me, what I've come to realize, especially even when speaking to Republicans, I tell them I'm a progressive who believes in progressive causes like everybody should have health care or whatever it is that we're talking about. But to get there, I am willing to work with people to make the steps that we need to be able to get to that point. And so I think that separates me from some other candidates, some other parts of the party. Perhaps, I don't want to, you say for yourself, but perhaps even for yourself, we've had these conversations before of wanting it all now and, negotiating from a place of let's get all of it now to see what you can get versus where I think there are ways to fight for immediate change if you open yourself up to working with some Republicans. And there's a ton of bipartisan legislation out there that could happen if Democrats take back Congress and hopefully the Senate as well to put that legislation on the floor. There's stuff that Republicans would vote for that we agree with that doesn't get on the floor right now because Mike Johnson blocks it. Right. And so if we had the ability to put that on, there is plenty of people of Republicans in moderate districts and swing districts that support union labor, for example. And so if we could put stuff out, we could put the PRO Act on the floor, which says, infrastructure money, government money goes to responsible corporations who actually pay their laborers for what they're worth. There are plenty of California and New York Republicans that would vote for that.
Yeah, I think so. I think I don't know if you like the terminology, but I would sort of brand that as like pragmatic progressive. If if you like that, roll with it.
If you want to put that label on me, that's fine. I think what it is at the end of the day is it takes a lot of work and a lot of individual conversations because labels don't really show the nuances of anybody. And I mean, I knocked on doors today and I had a person who's been voted Trump 3 times, is not happy with Trump right now, but not like he doesn't hate Trump right now, but he's not happy with him. That is a union worker who had a union sign, a proud union sign in front of his yard. Right. And like this guy was all over the place with his politics as I was going. It's just not defined that way. So I think that's the majority of Americans that aren't like you and me kind of on press a lot. I think the majority of Americans don't fit nicely into the groups that we've assigned them.
Yeah, we're kind of all over the place. Yeah, a lot of people aren't sickos like us and like super plugged in all the time to the politics of it. But I do think most folks, when you ask them on issue after issue after issue after issue, they actually lean progressive. And most of this has just been an exercise in branding and labels to what you mentioned. I want to ask about something you mentioned. You said, okay, we hope Democrats can take back the House, take back the Senate, maybe pass some good legislation, obviously, and then you have to deal with the president and whether he would sign it or not. And there's that. Let's just assume, let's pretend that he would sign good legislation. Let's just pretend. Well, then you've got a Supreme Court, and you sort of mentioned them in your earlier remarks about court ethics. Just a few days ago, this court, which has been slowly packed through maybe corrupt means over the last couple decades, gutted the signature achievement of the civil rights movement in that the Voting Rights Act, Section 2 specifically. And, I think we had a debate last Saturday, and one of those speed round questions was whether you supported expanding the court as maybe a way to rebalance things because it has been skewed so far right. Do this week's developments, at the time you said no, you don't support court expansion. Do this week's developments change your mind about that? And if not, what are we going to do to get around that massive roadblock to progress?
Yeah. Sure. So it's certainly tempting for it to change my mind, but it doesn't change my mind. And to pack the court, using the expression of our day, I think it's the nuclear option, and I think it leads to, it's like getting rid of like getting rid of the filibuster. I think you have the same problem where it's like voter suppression in general. It only works for the people in power, and if it flips, then it works for the people in power, and if it flips again, it works for the people in power. So I think it's you're playing with fire by doing that, and then what we do need a different way forward. So what do you do to be able to make progress? So firstly, in your hypothetical that Donald Trump signs all the legislation that the Democrats want to put onto the floor, it's possible. So what do we do about a Supreme Court that continues to vote things down and really redefine what the Constitution is by reading it the way they are? Part of that is people said you have to pass a constitutional amendment. That is near impossible to get done in any timely manner. It could get done if we focus on certain things as a country for a while. With gerrymandering, I think we can pass, specifically for gerrymandering, you can pass Amy Klobuchar's law that she's written up about stopping mid-districting gerrymandering. And I think that would give us a moment to think about this and debate this and stop the nuclear war that we have going back and forth. But I don't think this is a quick fix. This is the fight that we are in. We're very excited about this election, and we should be. And we will win this election as a Democratic Party and as people who believe in a constitution that allows all people to be actually represented. But it's just the first step. We're going to have a long fight ahead of ourselves to chip away at the awfulness that has happened to the country in the last few years and be able to get to a place where we can neutralize that court. We're going to need to get to a place where we can have a president in place that can appoint their own justices. We are going to need to get to a place where we bring more light and shed more light on what on who is actually buying our justices, and that's part of one of the pledges that I have, which is to say we should hold them accountable to say where their money and their gifts are coming from, which will help. And if they're violating that, well, then that's what impeachment is for. If they're violating that, then that's what marching them into the into Congress and talking and having them talk about that is. Yeah.
So, would you, obviously, Clarence Thomas's accepting of lots of gifts is well documented. Sam Alito has taken trips, also well documented. I think we just seen in the last couple of weeks that John Roberts himself was maybe engaging in some financial misrepresentation of where some of his wife's money came from through firms that were arguing before his court. Should those three be impeached?
Not yet, because we didn't have the laws in place really to define that. The way the law is written right now, we have no real ethics tight law from Congress saying that that's illegal. It's up for interpretation, and so they don't have to. So you got to put that law in place so that you can hold people accountable. I don't support impeachment for the purpose of like using it as a way of trying people to get public messaging out, but we need a stricter law.
All right, very good. So let's talk about, obviously, the I guess your primary qualification for this office. You're a doctor, right? You've seen a lot of stuff, and so. I think more than lots of folks, you can speak to the healthcare crisis we have in this country. That's one of the primary drivers of our affordability problem, certainly. And I think a lot of folks want to know how we can tackle the healthcare affordability problem and increase coverage and get better health outcomes in this space. And a lot of folks on the progressive left, like myself, say, hey, Medicare for all, single payer is the way to do that. I don't think you said you don't support a single payer Medicare for all option. I guess why, and what does Dr. Peck's solution to increasing coverage and getting toward universal care look like?
Yeah, so I do believe healthcare is a human right, and everybody deserves healthcare, and we need to get to a place where everybody has healthcare insurance. I knocked on doors today, and I met numerous people who do not have healthcare insurance in Charlestown, Indiana, which is where I was today. It is crazy, and they are at a moment where if they do come see me in the emergency department, they may be able to pay for that visit, but it's when I have to ask those people what they need to do on discharge, and their eyes go crossed when I say, yeah, you got to go follow up with a GI doctor and an orthopedist, and you need an MRI, and you need to take these 2 drugs, and please pay for all that. It's impossible, and that person is in crisis. If I could give you one more story to tell you where all my ideas get formed from. So secondly, I had a patient. I said patient. I had a constituent that I met in public housing in Jeffersonville last week with knocking, and he had cancer on his ear, and he smelled of urine, and the reason was because he had a neurologic problem that made his bladder incontinent, and he depended on Medicaid and Medicare for his disability, and he depended on SNAP benefits, and he depended on Social Security as well. And after knocked that door, and after we closed that door, I looked at my colleague Erica, and we both literally said the same thing to one another, like, that guy is going to die next year if Democrats don't get in power. That person's literally going to die. They're going to peel back all of those programs to the point where that person dies. And so it's not, we talk about affordability, as a buzzword, but affordability really is a word that means life or death, that means humanity for so many people. I'm an emergency doctor and I treat people who are struggling so badly. So I want to say that to give foundation of where I'm coming from when I say what my plan is. I want everyone to have healthcare. Just like we started this off, I don't think we are able to get Medicare for all right away. I don't think Medicare as well is the greatest program either. It has lots of flaws. It doesn't have dental. It doesn't have vision. It doesn't have hearing. We know that. But not only that, about 20% of people who are on Medicare still are in medical debt. People on Medicare do not have long-term care covered. And when you need long-term care, meaning someone in your house to take care of you or to go to assisted living or nursing home for a long time, you lose your home until you get Medicaid to cover it. And now you might not even get Medicaid to cover it. And so you become destitute. If you have a lengthy ICU stay, Medicare doesn't pay for it. And that's why there's jars in front of people's in your local corner store sometimes saying we gotta pay for Janie's medical bills also from the uninsured people. So it's a mess, the program that we have. I think the problem that we have is that we currently our politicians are beholden to corporations. And where I came to the realization that I need to never take corporate PAC money is through my understanding of healthcare and how it works in Washington. Because I see that Democrats and Republicans take money from these people and have to give them the time of day. The insurance companies, we need to weaken them. And so here's the actual plan. The first thing is to weaken the insurance companies. They're monopolies, very clearly monopolies. And that wasn't the case 10, 15 years ago, actually, that they were monopolies. They are clearly now because they have consolidated. United owns Optum, right? And Optum is a physician group. It owns nursing homes. It owns pharmacy benefit manager systems. It owns NP groups. It owns it owns literally the whole spectrum of what happens in healthcare.
And they all have a similar setup, right?
Yeah. And then so Aetna and CVS are the same thing. They came together and they have the same kind of thing going on. And, they buy physician groups, etc. And so that's monopolies. And we do need to lean on antitrust laws. And I want to march all of those executives into Congress and have them sit in front of our dais and ask them this question. How much money from Medicare taxes out of your Medicare taxes, Scott, and my Medicare taxes out of my paycheck went to your executive bonus? Because the money that comes out of, this is the second part, the money that comes out of our paychecks, 40 cents of that goes to corporations. And that includes corporations working with Medicare, right? That's what it goes to. And so it goes to their executive bonuses. It goes to their shareholder payouts. It goes to billion-dollar pharma campaigns. It goes to things like prior authorization, which absolutely should be illegal. It's one of the first things I want to get in front of, because that's an insurance company making a medical decision, right? I have a license to do that, right? So no. And it just creates bloat, and also it just makes them money and hurts people's health. There are pharmacy benefit manager systems, which are these middlemen that just suck money out of the system with no value. These things could and should be illegal, and there is bipartisan support for that. And so it's about weakening the insurance companies by taking away their tools and making it more public that your paycheck is going to their profit. I don't think that is clear to people. I think what people think is like the money you give to the healthcare system is going to their profit when you go to the doctor or when you pay your insurance company, but your actual tax money is going to their profit. And that's what needs to be cut. That's how we need to weaken those companies. And when we do that and make them weak, we can then start to and save money by decreasing those costs. We can start to expand healthcare.
So, yeah, I guess what I hear is you don't really support Medicare for all because Medicare itself is not sufficient. Like, we could strengthen Medicare and then, give that to all somehow down
That's right.
down the line,
It's nuanced.
obviously. And,
let me
much
say-
of that is that, Medicare has been, there's been resistance to it from the industry to include those things like vision and dental and hearing, and you got the Part D and then the Medigap and all that stuff at places where corporations can get their hands in there a little bit. Why not cut them all out entirely? Just
because
private,
we'd have to undo Citizens United to do that. Is my point, is the beginning of it. We all have to stop taking corporate money to do that. They have too much power. So if we can't just say, you're out of here right now, let's expand Medicare and make it cover everything. I would love to do that, to have a better public option or even a better public full program for people, a universal program for people. I would love to get there. I don't think that's possible or feasible until we take the money out of politics. That's not happening anytime soon. I'll pledge it. 70 other people that are running across the country are pledging it. But it's not happening tomorrow because you need a constitutional amendment. So what are you going to do about it? And that's what I'm saying. What are we going to do about it? We're going to fight the insurance companies by weakening them, by using the laws we already have in place to say what you're doing is ridiculous, what you're doing is illegal, what you're doing is hurting people, and what you're doing, what many people don't realize, is with taxpayer money.
So I've got a kind of a big question that an anonymous user submitted using our web form here. And I'm going to sort of read their setup and put a shortened version of it up on the screen here. And, we're talking about healthcare, and another concern that a lot of folks I'm hearing about is AI. And let's talk about the places where those two things intersect. And this anonymous user says that you built your career in the health tech and AI industry with connections to and funding from Sam Altman of OpenAI and Joe Lonsdale, the co-founder of Palantir. This is the same Palantir with the warfare and the ICE deportations and the mass surveillance of citizens and data collection. And championing the draft. They put out this 22-point manifesto a couple weeks ago that was, oh no, we lost Tim. Apparently Palantir didn't want us talking about them. They nuked you. Anyway. So anyway, we were talking about Mr. Lonsdale and Palantir and their CEO Alex Karp put a 22-point fascist manifesto out a couple weeks ago. That was scary. And then OpenAI, they used to be a nonprofit and they converted to an $852 billion for-profit company, removing many of the safety mechanisms and handing returns over to investors instead. And meanwhile, everyday Hoosiers are facing AI-related job losses. And then there's the whole data center question as well. This anonymous user also says your FEC filings show a $2,000 donation from Brian Bloom, VP of Millennium, a global hedge fund company. And what they really are driving at here is, are your votes on AI regulation, tech policy, and affordability going to protect Hoosier working families, or are your connections to big players in this industry going to sway you?
Got it. That particular donor is a childhood friend who is a Democrat, and that's where I got that. So tell you very blatantly where that money came from. And so your question, I'm sorry, because we got cut off here, is right in front of us here. Are your votes on AI regulatory tech policy affordability going to protect Hoosier working families? So this gets into, we could get at this in various ways, but data centers is probably the most relevant to today's votes that will be happening on the floor, and the things that we'll be struggling with, as well as happening right here in Indiana and Indiana 9, right? I think the transparency that we've gotten out of the backroom deals to get these data centers in here, kind of underneath the noses of Hoosiers, everyday Hoosiers, and then say, hey, they're here. Now let's talk about them. We made the deals. Now let's talk about them is pretty insane and needs to be regulated. There's casinos along the river here in Indiana, right, in our district, as an example. The amount of public discourse that happened when each of those casinos wanted to get in was a huge amount, right? Like, it was absolutely, and Clark County said no to it, and so then, Harrison County took it, and all these things. And not only that, but when those happened, Harrison County said, hey, if you want to come, we're going to ask you for a lot. And they got a lot. They got new schools and new libraries and a new YMCA and everything. Right now, the difference between what's happening with these big corporations coming in is that they're making the deals with politicians beforehand. They sign all the contracts, everything goes forward, and then the public discourse happens. And it needs to be regulated and reversed. So, and the way you can do that is by making sure that they're hitting certain environmental regulations that they need to, certain public good regulations that they need to, and let these local governments and local people actually have a voice in there. Again, not taking any money from these companies that we're talking about, so I'm not beholden to them as much as I am beholden to people who are going through this, including me as someone who lives here and having Facebook data center that is enormous being built in the county that I live in, and concerned about what they're going to do about their electricity, what they're going to do about the water, and not really having much of a say on it today.
I hadn't heard someone liken it to the gambling industry yet before, but that is pretty apt, actually, because AI, really, this entire AI boom is very much a gamble. We're building and building and building, and say we got to race China to get there. And I guess if you believe the hype about this thing and it is as powerful as everybody's going to say, it's going to employ or make a lot of people unemployed. If you don't believe the hype and this thing is a bubble, well, the bubble's going to burst and cause economic fallout there as well. So really, the gambling analogy is quite apt. I do want to stick on AI because this is another one of these things that I hear a lot about. Folks are concerned about it, and I don't know if this is the same Anon or a different Anon who submitted this via our web forum, but it's also an AI question. And she says, you recently suggested people use ChatGPT and used yourself as proof to vet candidates and competitors. And that said, where do you stand on AI use and responsible guardrails? And I don't know if she's talking about the guardrails for the data centers like you were just talking about, or responsible guardrails for, artificial general intelligence and, whether it's going to become sentient and kill us all. I know.
Great. There's a lot in that question, actually. So where do I start? So I did suggest to people to use ChatGPT. Where that was coming from is that we have not the most informed public all the time about who they're voting for. And when I was knocking on doors these last couple of weeks, there's so many people that don't even know there's a primary. And then what I saw as early voting happened is I would knock on a door and they wouldn't know who they voted for in my race. They didn't even know, right? Because they went into the ballot box not having researched, and right then and there just had to make a decision off of whatever. But there's a lot in there. One of the things is they just aren't used to seeing many choices on the Democratic ballots that they are all of a sudden seeing. And so there's a change in what we're asking them to do. And secondly, there's just uninformed voters. And that part of that is media problems and the media desert that we essentially live in, that you and I are both trying to solve in different ways. So ChatGPT is, and Gemini even more so, when you Google our names, right? There's the thing that comes up at the top. about AI that's going to drive voter behavior. Every year, every election, we have like a big, with Obama, it was Twitter and social media, right? Now, this election, I think AI is going to play a big role in it. And by AI, I mean consumer-based AI, like ChatGPT. And so I do think you should use it with references to be able to, if you need quick information before you go in. And if you're not someone who's going to spend a lot of time, it's better than not, but please use the references. That was what I said about it. If you bring the question up, I can get to the second part of it, which was guardrails. Yeah. So, our current congresswoman sits on the crypto policy, as well as technology, and she takes a ton of money from Sand Hill Road, which is Silicon Valley VC, etc. And so she's right now voting for deregulation as much as possible to let that go as fast as possible. I do think it needs to be slowed down. It does need to be partially publicly owned. The decisions need to be publicly owned and debated as to what's happening with this technology. That happens with nuclear energy, right? The public is involved with and our representatives, et cetera, are involved with how we are going to move forward with that energy policy. That there are big things in our civilization that do represent as existential threats that become part of public discourse because they're not totally privately owned, even if private owned businesses are driving it forward. And I think we need to treat AI the same way.
And we could dig into the AI thing, just spend a whole hour on it ourselves. But there are other things I want to get to, and we do have another question in the that was submitted ahead of time via our web form. And again, I would invite the folks who are watching on Facebook Live, on YouTube, at progressiveindiana.net. I know you're there. I see you. Speak up, pipe up. We want to hear from you. Dr. Tim would love to answer your questions, not mine. So let's go to our web form, and it's kind of a change of directions, but okay. This one is a current. Just this past week, this happened. We talked about it on the Sunday show this morning. If I can find the question here, I have it pulled up. Yeah, so the Fifth Circuit Court down in New Orleans recently, I want to say it was Wednesday, ruled that you cannot send mifepristone, that's an abortion drug, by mail. Now, this thing's going to be appealed to the Supreme Court still, but Ruth asked online if you can discuss the impact of this ruling, and does this improve patient safety in any way?
Improve patient safety? No. So there's two things to know about this.
They gave. Yeah.
Yes. So two things to discuss here. One is the actual process here. So as you know, telemedicine has been something that I've championed and been part on the ground of creating that for America and making sure that all Americans have access to it. I also worked with Planned Parenthood to put in teleabortion program. And so this was called teleabortion at first, what we're talking about. That was the original term that we used for it, which was see a doctor on telemedicine, and then they would send you the medicine through the mail. And this is what the program has become. And so I'm very proud of that work to create that access, because it has allowed women to keep their right to do what they want with their own bodies during this kind of faulty view from the Supreme Court of what we should be doing with abortion. So I'm very happy about that. It's a very safe drug. What is not safe is leaving people to be scared, to people to travel great distances, people to that I see in the emergency department who have life and death situations. You know what I have to do when I see someone who has a life and death situation that's pregnant, the first call has to go to a lawyer, the hospital lawyer, before making a medical decision. That is literally the government being in my exam room. That is literally the government making medical decisions. Government does not need to be making medical decisions. And so I'm very much support of that program. Another thing to know is that the pharma companies really want this program to continue. And so watch the money here of how they're going to be spending the money to keep mifepristone untouched by the FDA. And so especially what are they going to do to give money to Roberts and Clarence Thomas? It will be
one of these interesting things, right? Where the sides aren't so clear. It's like, yay, big pharma this time.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I guess along those lines, and sort of glad we arrived at this way. We talked earlier about reaching Republicans, working across the aisle, and whatnot. And this is one of those places where the lines are blurry and messy. You talk about working with Republicans. Can you name an issue where you'd vote with Republicans over most Democrats, or one where you would vote with the party over perhaps a majority of your constituents here in the 9th?
With what party over the constituents?
Where you would vote with Democrats over, say, what Hoosier voters would prefer, or where you would vote with Republicans over what your fellow Democrats would prefer?
Sure. So I think what's important to know about my stance on working with Republicans and working with anybody really is all the work that needs to happen to get before getting to a vote, before whatever that thing on the floor is. Once it's on the floor, now it's imperfect, right? We've done a whole bunch of negotiating and we've gotten to a place where it's imperfect. And so I then have to decide, how do I want to vote on this, what is likely going to be an imperfect bill? And where do I want to do that? I will vote in such a way that's in the best interest of my constituents at those times. There are places where I feel the best interest of our constituents, like we just talked about on abortion, is our rights, where I talked about, I always could fall back onto our First Amendment rights. If it's an LGBTQ issue, that's about the First Amendment, right? People get to be who they want and express who they want. And that's how I will be voting on those issues. It goes back to those things. The question about how do I work with people to get there is about finding the things that Republicans also will do. I talked about the PRO Act and making sure that unions get protections back and get their rights back. There are environmentalists in the Republican Party, believe it or not, because of the money that could be made from it. And so there are ways to make some deals there to get forward our environmentalists, but also having to protect individuals and workers and making sure that the labor there is good. I'm not saying to completely give yourself over to the corporations who want to take money out of people's hands, but I'm saying that there's some alignments there. We just talk about the mifepristone thing. There's some weird alignments that happen. Universal pre-K has Republican support. That actually has Republican support. People are surprised to hear that. There are Republicans that have written the construct of a bill that brings it so that when you look at education, you don't score the bill in the first 10 years. So currently, you say this bill costs $1 billion. This bill will save us $1 billion. The people who do that is the CBO, Congressional Budget Office, and they look at what in 10 years will happen. And so they say in 10 years, it'll cost $1 billion. With universal pre-K, costs some money to put it in. And then they want to bring it to 30 years, the window to 30 years on this particular bill, so that you can clearly see the benefits of universal pre-K. Because it comes when people start to graduate high school is when the real economic benefits come from it. And all of a sudden it becomes a saver, not a spender. And so there are Republicans that are trying to make that happen. You can make the same argument around healthcare in many ways as well. They're just not there yet. So working with Republicans, that's what I mean, is finding those issues that we can get progress, we can make our progressive ends, um, because they are going to be on board with it, and by they I mean just some of them, so that we can put something on the floor and get it passed.
You know what they say about a broken clock, right? Whether it's a Republican or whether it's a certain big corporation, sometimes they're right. And
Right.
when they are, you got to give them credit for it and take advantage of it and you use those situations. So I guess that was sort of a philosophical question. And I've got another one I'm going to throw at you again, but before I do, just a few minutes left here tonight. We've only got Dr. Tim for about 10 more minutes. So if you have questions for him, Facebook Live, YouTube, progressiveindiana.net, put those questions in the chat. We want to ask you. I have exhausted my web form, so we need new questions from the chat. But before or as we wait for folks to get those in, is there a position that you've evolved on over the last, maybe not just the last 2 years as you've been out there campaigning, listening to people, over the last 5 years, over the last 10 years? Is there something you've really changed your mind on in your adult life?
It's really a great question. I mean, I've learned so much through this process of talking to voters, of tens of thousands, probably hundreds of thousands of voters, but actual conversations with tens of thousands of voters, that it's impossible that I haven't changed my mind on things or learned more about things. I think I had a higher, if you say 10 years ago, I think I had a higher view of corporations. I didn't quite understand one fact until I myself got burnt by it so bad that I understood that it was a law for corporations. And I didn't really understand it, which was the corporations, all the boards of corporations, the boards have a charter. And in that charter, it will always say who their number one priority is. And it will always be the shareholder that is number one. And whether that's a private company, who are the VC investors or the PE investors, that is their number one thing that they're responsible to. Not their employees, not in my case of owning things, not our patients, not our, your customers. That's actually not who they're responsible to. And so when push comes to shove and it really hits the wall and things are really bad for one reason or another, they're always going to choose and fall back on the fact of what they should do by their charter, and it'll be for them. It will not be for regular people. And so corporations, and I see someone made a funny joke, like responsible corporations, who are those? Corporations do make responsible decisions sometimes, and they do it usually for the benefit of gaining more employees because employees want to work there, or they do have a good ethos to their people that they are serving. But at the very end of the day, when things go wrong, they have to vote at the best interest of the shareholder, even if it goes against the best interest of everybody else, whether that be the environment or the worker or the customers. And so you need to trust that fact when working with a corporation.
And government's job is to set the conditions so that making the responsible decision is the profitable decision. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And to get to the point where they don't have to get into a place where there's some existential threat to their company and they decide to go with whatever is best for themselves. Yes. And the government is there to guardrail, but also stimulate them to be able to make the good decisions for people.
So just a few minutes here, and I'll give you a few minutes to make a closing pitch, but I've got one more question for you. So, this is your second go around. You ran for this seat in 2024. Aaron Houchin beat you by like 29 points. I know, I don't want to remind you. But what's different this time?
Oh, so many things are different, and this could be the closing argument if you'd like. So Aaron Houchin, sure, beat me by 20, but I didn't feel like Aaron Houchin beat me by 20 points. Donald Trump in straight party ticket voting beat me by 20 points. I mean, people, her name recognition is so low still. It's in the, in our internal polling that we did, it was in the 30s, 40%. So people don't even know who she is, right? So they're not necessarily out there voting for her. So what is that? That brings a moment where we have an opportunity due to Indiana's very poor voting records in that we don't vote very much, right? We're 50th by some measures, 43rd, 47th, based on we're bad at getting out there and voting.
None of them are good. Yeah.
None of them are good. And I see that as an opportunity. And in this year, we have an enormous opportunity. Why? Because Democrats are engaged like they have never been, and haven't been since Obama, right? They just have not been engaged in this way. Jeffersonville had 2,000 people at its last No Kings. Corydon had 700 people in a town of 3,000, right? Madison had 400. There were obviously thousands in Bloomington. There were people in Seymour having No Kings events. So, et cetera, et cetera. And so that energy and that engagement on Democrats is out there in ways that it hasn't been. But there's also people who are upset with Donald Trump. And in my last run, I spoke to a lot of Trump voters who really just thought he was the best thing ever, right? Even though they weren't necessarily MAGA people, like what we just, like the core 30% MAGA people, 35% MAGA people. They still voted for him. They still wanted to vote for him. They still thought he was awesome. Those same people in the last 6 weeks have started to make a real turn. Literally the last 6 weeks. About 6 months ago, I got some people calling me about Venezuela saying, hey, I'm in the military. If they asked me to fight, I would have had to say no. How can I help? I guess that was like 4 months ago or so. But, these things started to shift
more, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think that was January. Is that January? And so there's that, right? And there's Jimmy Kimmel. People started getting mad about Jimmy Kimmel who are on the right. And I was having these conversations and some of it like really affected them. Gas prices are what got them finally. And I think there's a lot of jadedness by Democrats and saying, why did it have to be gas? Finally, it's affecting them as the gas prices. Let me go back to that person who I talked to in the beginning of this time where we talked, of this town hall, that it became too expensive to work all of a sudden. It was the thing that broke the camel's back of their entire life, of all these things that they were holding up and juggling, of childcare being too expensive and healthcare and their housing and all these things. And they were at a point where they were maybe breaking even or losing a little bit of money. And somehow gas became the thing where it just collapsed for them, for so many people. And again, I was in Charlestown today. I spoke to this union person who votes Republican. I don't think he really identifies Republican or Democrat, but he voted for Trump 3 times. Said he was great the first time. This time, he's not so happy about them. Same town in Charlestown who I knocked about a week ago, had a couple that one voted for him twice, the other voted for him 3 times, and they said, we're done with Republicans. I cannot vote for another one this year and maybe for the foreseeable future. So there are people doing that, and they didn't do that before. So we need a way to reach those people. And it's not just messaging. Messaging's not enough. We need an operation. We need something that's built. I've been building this now for 3.5 years. That is why we were able to knock on 10,000 doors and talk to people. That is why there are, Scott, 3,000 postcards been sent from the lower part of the district to Bloomington, directly to Bloomington voters, because I wanted those people down here, or the people in Bloomington, to see that there are people down here that will take the time to write a postcard and send it to you and say, hey, you're not alone up there. You have a coalition across this whole district. Let's do it. We've made thousands and thousands of phone calls And it's happening right now. We're having a session literally right now as I talk to you, a phone banking session. And all of that's there. I also found out that people who know what they're doing on campaigns don't work for first-time candidates. I didn't know that getting into it. And it wasn't until I was a second candidate that I put out job descriptions and, calls for jobs, and different people were applying. And I found out, these people don't actually ever go to a first-time candidate because you don't know what you don't know. And now I know. I also have a large donor list of people who are individuals who are giving me money to fund this. That's why I've raised a lot more than the other people, because I have that network that I built from hard work and phone calls and gaining trust from voters across the district, across the state, and people outside of the state too, that like the issues that I support. And so that whole operation's in place, and it just started. We knocked on the doors, and today four different cities today, four different cities at the same time, right? We have the operation to be able to deal with that, collect the data, be able to use it to engage people. And so I'm excited about using that engine and making it grow and grow and grow. And if you want to join that, please do. And after this primary, if I win, please become part of this movement, and let's win this election. If I lose, I very much promise, I will become part of whatever Democrats movement that is growing as well, because we need to flip the House.
How can folks become a part of this movement, learn more about your campaign? I know we've only got a couple of days left before the primary here, but how can folks help out in what time we have, and then going forward, assuming, or if you win?
Yeah, so go to the website, and on the website you can go to the part that says join the movement on the top. I'm doing it right now so I can say it. And it says, I just want to get involved. I want to write postcards. I'd like to knock doors. I'm looking for a fellowship. We have the knocking days, I guess, for the primary up there, which the knocking days have stopped at this point. But there are call banking going on through the election, even on Tuesday, that you can join and do it. If you really want to knock, we will get you some literature, and you can do your own neighborhood. There's a lot of people doing that as well. So go to the website, www.timpeckforcongress.com. Please do it. You also are welcome to call me, 812-287-9079. I've done that because Lee Hamilton told me to do that. He said, put your real number on your card. And so I did.
Very good. That's transparency right there. Well, thank you very much, Dr. Tim Peck. Best of luck on Tuesday. All of you who are watching, whether you vote for Dr. Tim or not, go vote, please. And after you do, join us at 7 p.m. 6 Central here on Progressive Indiana Network for our election coverage, where we'll go all around the state looking at both sides of the aisle, Republican, Democrat, all the key races. We'll have results and analysis. Join me, Brianna Newhart, Carly Dunn, Derek Holder, Kelly DeLong. I think Tracy Carson's going to be with us. We hope to see you there in the chat. But until Tuesday night, I'm Scott Aaron Rogers. Love each other, Indiana.
Thanks.